So what if the reason you don't have what you want, the rest, the clarity, the healing, is simply because there's a blockage between who you are and who you've been told to be? Today's guest, Tim Thomas, has lived through war, survived 6 years on sleeping pills, and still came out with this truth: your breath can bring you home. But before we dive into this episode, you already know what time it is. With me, y'all.
Welcome to the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast.
Y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. It's your healthy habits and lifestyle coach, Jovonnie, and I am here with Tim Thomas. Tim, welcome to the Good Vibe Studio.
Joe, it's so good to be here. We got a lot of sunshine in Australia, but your good energy is giving me tan lines right now.
Not the tan lines, Tim. So, Tim, before we really get into sleep, stress, and breath work, take us back. What were those two lowest points in your life, and how did those experiences shape the work that you do right now?
Okay, well, two of them. I'll go to the one where in 2009, outside the war in Afghanistan, beyond fatigue. Like in the special forces, they train you to deal with fatigue. That's how they select you out. But this was different. In a war zone, you're not just tired, you're not just physically hurting. You've lost your mates. And a lot of the time you think you're going to die. So there I was lying in the dirt thinking I'm going to die. And I got like 2 cents worth of energy. And I thought, well, there's no point, right? And then I'm like, well, if all you've got is 2 cents, you better invest that. And so all I did, I had no idea about breath work. But what they teach you to do in the military is when you take a sight picture through your rifle, you take a deep breath in, and then let it out slowly. And then that stills the body, and your crosshairs, become, you can target what you want to target, right? So what I did, I'm like, well, I'm just going to take a deep breath and focus on my thumb. And I pretended there was like a pinhole at the top of my thumb, and I just breathed in through my thumb. And I'm like, and I kept doing that. And then my thumb didn't just relax, it kind of turned into white light. And I'm like, whoa. And this is just in my mind's eye, right? And it's like white light. And so, okay, let's do this with my index finger, my pointer finger, my index finger, my ring finger, my pinky finger. And then I pulled it through my arm into my body. And I found we never got 8 hours of sleep, but we barely got sleep at all. But whatever sleep I did get, it's like that 2 cents turned into like $1.20. And so I'm like, that is an interesting investment. And I started to understand that energy is like money. How you invest, it's how you get it back. And when it comes to breath work, it's probably the most consistent return on your energy investment. And this is why I'm such a big fan of it. And this is why I love connecting people to it, because this is their power that most people don't even know they have. I didn't know I had it, and then the other time was I had a COVID divorce. And, with that, there's a lot of adjustment. So I used to say I lost my house, my home, my money, regular access to my kids. But now I say I traded my house, my home, my money for a very valuable lesson. And this lesson was about at 2 a.m. when, and I'm sleeping on the couch of my parents' house, and in my 40s, I felt like a complete freaking loss of life. And you can bet I wasn't sleeping. And in that time of complete loneliness, isolation, sense of loss, sense of failure, I knew that breath work could bring me peace, but it was like all this crap was stopping me from even getting my body to do it. And so I get out of bed and I'm about to do some form of self-harm, pills, drugs, whatever it is. But I look at my left thumb and I say, Tim, you can take one breath. Just take one. Can we swear on this podcast, or we gotta keep it peace? One friggin' breath, right? And I drive it into my chest and I go, I'm like, whoa, that just worked. Take 2. And I drove 2 fingers in my chest. Okay, this is working. Get to 5. And so finger after finger, breath after breath, my body started kicking out all the, it was probably at breath 15 that all the crap in my head just got kicked out. And the mind that was sane inside of me says, Tim, this is working. Don't stop. And so in that moment of absolute low failure, worse I could think of, I just found that breath work was this unshakable, fantastic investment to get your own power back, because I had to trade all those things, Jojo, to make me realize that this part of me here is about where my influence stops. Everything outside of that I can't control. But guess what? I can control what goes under here. And if I let the outside world make my mind up about what I can and can't do underneath my own skin, I would have been probably still doing self-harm. To be honest, lucky to be here. But when I realized the power underneath my own skin, and with that, the power of my own breath, then I'm like, right, this is good for me. And then there comes a point where you're like, well, I've got to put it in a way where other people can access it as well.
I got it. That was a lot to unpack, Tim. And I wrote down so much that I had just now. But I want to start with that moment that you just had last, and you talked about the self-harm and potentially not being here right now. And so we know that there's so many other people that experiences have those same types of feelings, those same types of thoughts, those same types of beliefs. But you talked about that breath work, and about at breath 15, at one of your lowest moments, that you could have chose anything else but breath work. What was it for you that was like, oh my goodness, I really just lost this identity, these thoughts, everything just shifted? What was that mindset shift approach that said, that's what just happened to me? How did you recognize that? And how did you say, okay, is that just in a moment that I just had, or is this real life?
Well, that's an excellent question, Jojo. And if I could just invite yourself and everyone listening to think of their mind like a garden, okay? And whatever you water grows. And if you've been watering the weeds of stress, they start taking over. Okay. And what I was doing was watering the weeds of stress. And what ends up happening in my experience of it is those weeds grow and grow and grow. And they don't just take over, eyeballs pop out of them and they become sentient. Okay. And they become very aware of the things that you do that feed them, and aware of the things that you do that starve them. So if you've ever, and this shows up like in small things, if you want to exercise, if you want to make your body powerful, how many times there's been thoughts in your head going, you know what, let's do this later. Let's not do this now. Let's, you know what, because they're the stress weeds, the disempowered parts of you that know when you access your body, when you access your power, they're kicked out. So they're fighting for their survival. They're very aware of what feeds them. They're very aware of what starves them. And so what I was doing was feeding the stress weeds were loving it. And even though I knew that breath work would help, these stress weeds locked me out of that possibility. And it wasn't until I jammed my thumb into my chest, and at breath 15, that's when you have to understand that your breath is very ancient, deep wiring, and your breath is older than your thinking mind. So our thinking mind is relatively new in our evolution as a human being. So before we were sentient, putting paintings on rock walls, we were actually breathing. Okay. We were dancing. We were fighting. We were, we weren't thinking, and we weren't necessarily speaking either. This ancient wiring goes well beyond spoken words. And so, if I was to, and this is where a lot of the modern therapy, you can study for 7 to 10 years to be a psychologist, but no one tells them that the trauma goes down deeper than the words can reach. And if you don't have some sort of physically integrated system to remove those blockages, you're just kind of skimming a rock on a very deep lake. And breath work has the ability to tap into that ancient wiring and kick and outrank those intrusive thoughts in your head. But the intrusive thoughts, stress weeds, I call them sentient stress weeds. They're aware of what you do, and they show up powerfully when you're about to become powerful. So just a tangent on that for a second. When you find resistance to doing something like, oh, I really don't want to exercise or do breath work, that's the time you need it the most, because you've weighted your mind on the side of the disempowered parts, and they are very aware. So it becomes like a reverse compass. So if your enemy says, oh, you should be going south because it wants to do you harm, well, no, you should be going north. And that's sort of that, to answer your question around, and it's breath 15 that the alkalizing agent sort of kicks in and clears out your neural pathway. So this isn't meditation. Okay, big mistake. Breathwork is not meditation, because meditation is thoughts controlling thoughts. And if you've got a goddamn train wreck going on up there, it's pretty hard to control that. The amount of people who said meditate, and yes, meditation is good, but breathwork is a chemical override. And so that's like you've got an ace in your hand every single time. So that power is the very thing that your disempowered parts are aware of, and they will try and talk you out of it. Yeah. You're on mute, Jojo.
Thank you so much. Airplane came through, so I muted it. So I appreciate you, Tim. But this is what I thought about that last part that you mentioned. Breathwork is a chemical override. And again, it goes back to that power that you mentioned before as well. And I just love the aspect of that, because that's the one thing we do have control over. When someone's having a panic attack, when someone's in chronic pain, I remember feeling the debilitating pain, passing a bowel movement, the low back pain, just experiencing the different symptoms with endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibroids. That pain, there's a reduced level of pain when you start the deep breathing. And I call it my 5 and 7, where I inhale for 5, hold for 3, and I exhale slow for 7. When I start the deep breathing, the pain decreases. It doesn't go away, but it definitely does decrease. And so I'm glad that you talked about the chemical override in regards to the breath work. But I don't know if anybody else is resonating with it. When you talked about the resistance, when you feel the resistance, that's when you need to do it the most. So when you say I need to get up and go work out, and you choose to stay in the bed, clearly getting up and going to do the intentional movement is what you need to do in that time. So if that resonated with y'all, drop resistance in the comments if you're watching the video version of this podcast. But if you listen on your favorite podcast distribution platform, if anything has resonated with you just thus far, go ahead and follow the podcast and give the show a rating. Tim, what is feeding you or starving you in regards to your mind, your mindset? And I think that's a powerful reflection that you gave us, to take that bite-sized piece of what does that look like for me right now? Like, in regards to my thoughts, my feelings, my beliefs, what am I starving and what am I feeding? And that place, that kind of shifts that aspect. And so I'm really glad that you talked about that, and then gave us the analogy of the mind.
Just to chime in for 1 second, because if you understand that concept, Jojo, there's no longer any right or wrong, good or bad. There's just things that empower you and move you closer to what you really want and who you really are. And then there's the things that disempower you and move you further away. So it becomes this wonderful internal compass. But to even think like that, you need a certain amount of energy capital, so people think, oh, I've got to do. No, let's get some energy capital in our own body so we can start investing. Let's find out who I am. I'll invest $10 worth of energy there. Nothing. Invest $10 there. I got $1,000. You know what? This has probably got a good chance of me lining up with who I truly am. So I just want, because I love giving value, and I do like hearing good words that are truthful, but I also like to give people a permanent access to it as well. So if we can turn on people's internal compasses as we do this, then they're not going to be listening to this podcast all day. They're going to be doing their own thing, after this. So if we can access and positively impact that inner steering, then I think that's going to be us as healers can say we've done our job.
Right. I mean, if they're not feeling empowered and they're at the Empowered Place, Empowered Lives podcast to catch this good vibes in the Good Vibes studio, we hope that they can take something from it, because that is definitely our mission. But it was something that you talked about that I love the reframe as well within your stories, of the two aspects that was your lowest part. And it was changing the verbiage of loss to trade. And that within itself is another shift. A shift in your beliefs, a shift in your thought process. So if there's anyone who said, I've lost this, I've lost that, or I'm losing so much of my life because of this condition or this ease or this quality of life, or because of this situation, understand what you might be trading in the essence of the experience that you are actually going through or you have gone through, because there's so much value in your experiences. And I know you also talked about that piece, like just thinking with the analogy with the gun and only having like 2 cents, 2 cents worth of energy that then translated into $1.20. Like, I've never heard anyone put a currency on the energy in a moment where it was almost life or death. And I just love that analogy and how you kind of placed that and positioned it, but it kind of goes right back into what we talked about before, Tim. And you said the economy is based on us not really knowing our own power. Can you tell the people, what do you really mean by that? And how does breath work actually help us reclaim that power back?
Sure. So let me just say that all of us who own bodies, it's an incredible resource that most people don't know how to use. And our ignorance of how to use our own bodies gets exploited by people saying, oh, well, I'll do that for you. So if I didn't understand energies like money, how I invest it, how I get it back, then I'd be waking up and I'd still need energy. So I would possibly pay more for coffee, pay more for energy drinks. And that's a good day. On a bad day, I needed energy, so I'd take it from others. And you wonder why there's so many a-holes in this world, because everyone needs energy and they don't know how to generate it for themselves. And people can get very skilled at taking from others. You know what I mean? They can get exceptionally skilled, and it's a big shift to understand the currency of energy and your own energy capital when you can live like an energetic millionaire. You can invest in yourself and create 500% more than what you need, so you can live life. And if someone takes a bit, then whatever. I'm just going to become an energetic millionaire tomorrow, because I've been that guy, Jojo, who only had $1.50. Someone took 75 cents, and I'm like, I'm going to revenge you and spend the next 6 years of my life trying to get that back, because that was wrong. I'm right, and I'm going to, and I forgot the fact that I could make another $1 million the next day. And until we can be in charge of our own energetic portfolio, and that's really quite a joyful, quite a peaceful, quite a loving experience, to know that the thing that you do that gives you a great return, that makes you abundant, you can be a generous person. Generosity done right, because generosity is such a powerful thing, and it's so wonderful it's such a wonderful feeling to feel needed and helpful to others. But I was doing generosity wrong for so many years. So for the last decade, I've worked in the veteran recovery space. I had a goal of saving 40 veteran lives from suicide, because we've lost, that amount to bombs and bullets in Afghanistan, in Australia, but many more times than that to suicide. So my goal was to save 40 veteran lives from suicide. And I was doing good work. That goal was achieved within a year. But what nobody knew, Jojo, was every 6 or 7 weeks, Tim Thomas had to write himself off drunk for 3 days. Because I was helping and being generous, but I was giving of myself and I wasn't giving of my abundance. And so now I still believe in generosity, but I don't give of myself anymore. I give of my abundance. So this is why I'm a proponent of generosity, but it starts with yourself, investing in those things that are aligned with who you truly are. And then if you've got 500% more than what you need, you can give 20% away each day, and people can love you, hate you, to tell you to F off. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. You're in touch with something so much bigger than what can be taken from you. And, you know, we're human. We've all been taken from. And that can be such a bad experience. People end up saying, well, without knowing it, they say, well, that was a bad experience. I don't want it to happen again. I'm going to hold myself in this position, you know, to protect myself. Or if I, you know, when I'm working with high school students, I'll have a plant and I'll say, this plant wants protection, and I'll put a steel bucket over it. Okay. So yes, it's protected, but it's dying slowly. We kill ourselves slowly if we're not boldly investing in ourselves and then, you know, actively, you know, paying it forward.
I love it. I like that analogy. That was such a good one to talk about how tightly you want to protect yourself, but at the same time, allowing that experience or that form of protection to be a way that is actually decreasing you and costing you so much more of your life. And you hit on a lot of stuff. I really love the energetic portfolio. Like, I've never heard of someone, you know, like speaking about an energetic portfolio. But
so Jojo, question: what would happen if you spent money and you didn't keep track of any of it? You just kept on spending money on everything.
I wouldn't know if I have it or I didn't have it to spend.
Well, you'd probably end up broke. And if you kept spending, you'd probably end up in, overdraft. Okay. And you're paying interest on the overdraft. And you'd probably have loan sharks going, oh, look, I'll lend you $100 this week. You need that, don't you? Yeah, I need it. All right. But then you got to pay 150 back the next week. And this is the way the world works. And I should say the economy works on us not knowing our own energetic portfolio. It'll give you a short-term energy loan, but you got to pay it back with interest. And then you go further into debt. So that sort of, I like the saying sovereign skin. Okay. If you can have sovereignty of your own skin, you're in charge of your own energetic portfolio. You know that you can invest in yourself. You know that you can be an energetic millionaire, and no one can touch that. You know, you can't stop people taking from you. That is true. And I've had to learn, you can't stop others taking from you, but they can't stop you putting it back in and making another $1 million the next day. That's what we tend to forget after the painful experience of being hurt or taken from.
And why do you think that people focus on the painful experience versus what could be purposed from that experience to translate it? Like, why do you think there's so much more of an emphasis there?
Well, as humans, we have a lot of stored energy around pain aversion or threat aversion. Okay. So there was a really interesting experiment with a mouse, and they attached a little string to its tail, and it was measured in like newtons or something. And it was going towards the cheese, and it was like 300 newtons. And then they put the smell of a cat in behind it, and it upped it to like 1200. So we have kind of 3 times the energy available to us to avoid and be get away from something. So with that in mind, it's very easy to focus on that which you want to avoid and not what you truly want. And if you look at all the mainstream media, they love triggering our ancient threat response. In Australia right now, the price of eggs went up, right? And the way they're talking about it is, your survival's on the line because the price of eggs have gone up. This is an outrage. You should be outraged. The price of eggs, your children are going to suffer. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? But this is how we get exploited, because without saying it, the marketers know that we've got 3 times more energy to go away from what we don't want than towards what we do want. Okay, so if we can, this is why, you know, having your own sovereign skin and knowing what you really want and essentially giving most of that to yourself gives you that position of sovereignty when you have all this crap coming into you. You know, this is where you stop and this is where I start. All right.
I like that. I've never heard of it like that. So I don't know if anybody else is vibing with that one, but put 3X in the comments if you understand that there's been places and times in your life that you definitely focused more on the things that you wanted to avoid, the things that you wanted to get away from, versus 3X in your energy going after the things that you truly wanted, the things that you truly resonated with, who you want to become, what you wanted to experience, your goals, your aspirations, your desires, your dreams. Let us know. I want to see how many people really align with this mouse that was kind of influenced by the cheese, but then the cat as well, because I think so many people relate to that experience, Tim, in regards to what you were talking about. And that was, I love the visuals and the examples that you provide.
Well, actually, you talked about something very powerful there. So that moving away from that which you don't really want is something that you can actually use as rocket fuel. Okay. So you can, some of the most powerful decisions I've ever made in life was on the back of, I don't want this to happen, so therefore I will. I got scared. I'll tell you a funny story that I probably haven't told anybody, but I was a 7-year-old kid, right? And we used to go to this very remote area. Where I grew up was kind of like, if I was to relate it to the movies, like Deep South Mississippi. You know, guys are really country, drink a lot, party hard. And I was a 7-year-old kid, and there was these people in this very remote area, and they were drunk, and these 2 guys came outside and they're kind of wrestling with each other, right? Just play fighting. And then one of them starts bawling his eyes out. Like full on crying, right? And this is where men are men. You know, you don't cry, right? I'm in the dark. I'm just in the corner. They didn't know I was there. And this guy's crying, and he's howling like a real and I'm like, this was, and then what came out of his mouth sculpted the rest of my life. He says, "I'm not even 30 and I can't get it up." And I'm like, that is not happening to me. I'm going to look after this body. You know, I am not going to abuse it with alcohol.
But that kind of goes, I found a little segue into that, and it kind of relates to that. And that is something else that you mentioned that I wanted to give you a shout out for. But let's go with, you say we're not broken, we're just blocked. What kind of blockages does breathwork help dissolve?
Sure. Okay. Well, I would love to give you a lived experience of this, because, you know, we're talking right now and that's cool. And that's hitting on one level of, you know, our eyes, ears, you know, if you're listening and watching. But how about we go through the lens and go deeper into ourselves? Okay. So the thing about breath work is you and I have been doing it our whole lives. So there's certain permissions we need to give ourselves to have the full experience of it. Okay. So when I show people just how to simply breathe, I have to ask permission, and I invite them to give permission to themselves, because when you breathe properly, it's like a new experience. And if you've got attachments or blockages, that you can't necessarily fully experience that, right? Because you're like, oh my gosh, this is new. So all I'm going to ask is 3 simple permission questions. And, you know, to yourself, Jojo, I'll talk to you, but I'll also, you know, invite the listeners to answer it truthfully. Jojo, do you give full permission to your breath to fully nourish every cell in your physical body?
Yes.
Awesome. Jojo, do you give full permission to your breath to nourish your mind?
Yes.
do you give permission to your breath to fully nourish your unconscious mind?
Woo. Yes.
All right. So this is really simple.
Okay.
All we're going to do is breathe in and out. Now, if you did that, you've taken your first conscious breath. Congratulations. Now I'm going to show you how to expand that gently. So this time when we breathe in, we're going to breathe in again and again and again and again. And I invite you to look up as you do this. All right. So let's breathe in and then breathe in again and again. Look up, and then let it out. Well done. You might have noticed there was some extra room opening up in your top third. And breath has a lot of emotions attached to it, and people don't know that. So when you breathe fully, you feel fully. All right. Now, the joy I have with my job, Jojo, is I show people how awesome their body is. Most people don't know that, but in their 2 fingers and thumbs, they've got a turbo button. And that turbo button boosts, we'll call it your secondary inhale, that little bit of extra space. Your primary is where you normally breathe in and out. Your secondary is where you breathe in more. So what we're going to do is we're going to blow it out, shake it out, and then we're going to breathe in. And then when it comes to the secondary inhale, we're going to push those buttons really hard and look up. Okay. And then hold it, shake your shoulders, shake, shake. And then when it feels good, let it out with a really big sigh.
I felt that in the back of my head, around here in my temples, and right above my belly button.
Well done. Well done.
Permission granted.
So just like we noticed that we could breathe in more by doing a few little things, we're going to exhale and exhale and squeeze out as much air as we can. Okay. So
exhale,
a lot of this,
exhale.
a lot of the stuck energy is often in that last cup of air. Okay. All right. And when people laugh, they go, that's like a really deep sort of getting rid of, stuck energy or you know what I mean? So we're gonna tap into this clearing factor of exhaling. We're going to exhale more. And you'll often hunch over when you do that. But then when we breathe in, our mouth's going to be closed, and we're going to do what we did. Breathe in, look up, pinch our fingers, open, and shake.
Okay.
Okay. So with your power buttons ready, blow it out. Out more. Oh my gosh, I can keep breathing out. Then with your mouth closed, breathe in, look up, speed the inhale up, open, in more, hold it, stretch your shoulders, shake your shoulders, move your shoulders. Now, when you feel like you can't stop a yawn, cover your mouth and let out a really big yawn. Ooh. Open the jaw. That's it. All right. Okay, so checking in. That is just 2 breaths. Okay.
And when should people utilize those exercises, like in their life, their practice? Is it when they're feeling anxious? Is it when they're going to sleep? When should they consider like rewinding, coming back to that part in this episode to actually utilize this practice?
Great question. Now, the idea is to set your level of where you want to, your energetic highway. Okay. So this is, Jojo, she's feeling good. She's feeling strong, confident. Okay. And when you start going off that highway, then you use your breath to get you back in that highway or that zone. Okay. So intentional breathing first thing in the morning helps you set, like, this is the energetic millionaire I want to live as. And when I start living like an energetic pauper, I will, with these little power buttons, get myself back to who I'm really supposed to be being, you know. And it's not an action, it's an energy state. Okay, so giving yourself that energetic portfolio. Okay, and an energetic portfolio isn't jumping off the walls with coffee and Red Bull. Energy is simply you feel you know who you are. If you've got a thought, you can bring it into reality. You know, there's peace, there's power, there's often generosity, there's often joy, there's often love. And that state I found is maintained so much easier when you create it in the mornings. So imagine what it would be worth to you to create that state of, well, this is what I consider the person I want to be, my idea of normal. Okay. And then whenever you get off that through the day, you can just access this tool. Because when I was on pills, I had pills not just in the medicine cabinet, but by my bed, in my car, in the fruit bowl, because I didn't know how to bring myself back into my field of normal, the highway of Tim. Okay. So I use a chemical equation to do that. But now using my breath, it's there whenever you want it. But it does need to be a bit of a trained habit, because what happens is people will get off the road an inch and then they'll start fishtailing and they'll panic and they'll go to what they always do, and that is react. But if you can lock into place, you know, with regular habits, regular breathing, this is the person I want to be, this is the energy system I want to operate in, and any variance on that you can respond to, you know, rapidly.
So what do you think people kind of get wrong when it comes to sleep? Like you said, you had the sleeping pills, you had pills by the bed, you had them in the fruit bowl. What do you think people kind of get wrong in regards to sleep?
Okay. People get wrong mostly they attach their self-worth with what they do. And if what I do is who I am, then the second I stop doing stuff, I'm worthless. And no one wants to be worthless. And if you send that signal into your mind will be doing backflips. Or what more can I do? What more can I do? Or you'll start reacting to things. You'll start reacting to threats, you know. And breath, I should say air, has a certain nature. Okay. The nature of air is you can't hold it. You can't hold air, right? It's obvious, but it needs to be said. So when we breathe, we take on the nature of air. And air doesn't allow us to hold on to any physical tension. Air doesn't allow us to hold on to any mental tension. So those blockages get dissolved when we take on the nature of air. And this is what I'm saying, a chemical override, that's really real. You know, anti-inflammatory, I got a lot of chronic injuries from my army career. I was on a lot of pills for pain. I got off all of them just with the understanding of what breath can do, you know. And what people realize, Jojo, it's not so much a set of lungs we all own. It's a medicine cabinet with a lot of different shelves. You breathe a certain way, you elicit a certain response. If you want to go to sleep, you breathe a certain way. If you want to study, you breathe a certain way. If you want to fight, you breathe a certain way. If you want to dance, you breathe a certain way. If you want to be really sociable with people, you breathe a certain way. And it's that knowledge which helps people establish their own sovereign power. You know, in my mind, I'm like, well, what's the best thing I could do for anybody? And honestly, people know what they're supposed to be doing and how they're supposed to be doing it and the gifts that they have. But not a funny thing, but something we used to do in the Special Forces, we knew nothing of the science of sleep, but we used to attack the enemy's sleep. Because we knew if we took it out for 3 nights, it would mess them up better than a bullet. Okay. So if you want to destroy someone, destroy their sleep. It's like poisoning the soil. It doesn't matter what you do with the tree or the fruit. It's going to die with poor soil. But if you really care about somebody, you will care about their sleep. If you really care about yourself, you'll care about your sleep. And everyone's trying to wring the life out of daylight hours, waking hours. I like to put life into the unconscious hours. Then all of a sudden the garden starts flourishing, So the exciting thing isn't, yes, the first step needs to be, good night's sleep with breath work. But the exciting thing for me is seeing these seeds of greatness, which is in everybody, and they're just lying dormant. Okay. And when the energetic level of the soil gets to the right level, they'll flourish. You cannot not have a seed flourish in the right environment. And this is what sleep and breath will do for you. But it's not spectacular. The marketers don't want you to know it because if you become a sovereign individual, all their crap becomes redundant real quick.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Like, what about the people who have limiting beliefs that, I can get off the pills, the pain pills, and all of these other things that I'm so accustomed to having to help me cope or manage the pain levels, and really just turn to breath work? Like, is it really that powerful? Can I really do it? What do you say to those people that might have that lack of belief that breath work has this power? Like, what do you say to them, Tim?
Yeah, no, and I get it because I've been there. Like I said, 6 years on pills that I because I didn't know my own sovereign power. So and there's a time and a place for pills. I'm not against pills, but what no one told me is the cost of taking them, because there's a benefit, but there's also a cost, right? And what nobody told me also was just how hard it is to get off these things. Okay, if it's like I had to pay back everything that these pills gave me when I started to come off of them. And when it comes to feeling like going insane, that was as close to insanity as I've been trying to, and there's a proper way to come off them. And you have to, work with the medical authorities when you are coming off pills, but you will be very surprised how much easier that is when you start tapping into your own medicine cabinet.
I thank you for breaking that down. I hope people get that, but I love the fact that you brought in cost of the pills and how it's really hard to get off. It's really hard for your body to kind of recalibrate and get back to a natural state because of all of the things that the medication was causing. Like, I know there's been people that's been on the podcast with polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, adenomyosis, fibroids, who have experience with birth control, and then trying to get off the birth control and trying to get their bodies back regulated to a state where, the period flows are, nice, not heavy, not clots, not, different mood swings based on all the different hormones, the weight fluctuations. So the cost of taking something or the cost of not doing it. I kind of have this question now, Tim, as I talk through that, is what is the cost of not utilizing breath work in your life, your healing journey, your being?
Another excellent question, because I won't be judgy with this. I'll just own it myself. Okay. So when I was on those pills, every time I took those pills, I was telling myself, well, I can't do this for myself. So my sense of self-worth was dropping every time I took those pills. So if I was to continue, what would be the cost of me not knowing my own power? Well, then I would be living a life that's not aligned with who I really am. And I'd be interacting with people in a state of inauthenticity. I'd be interacting with the people I love most in a state of inauthenticity, disempowerment. Leave Dad alone. He's really tired. Leave Dad alone. He's in a lot of pain. So what I've had to realize is it's our value as seen from the eyes of others isn't so much what we do. We get caught up in what we do. All right. It's actually what we've come through. So I want to just bring this into the minds of those people that are going through something right now. They're up against something. We've talked about pills, but this could be this what we're going to go through now. It could be any range of diseases, but we're talking about pills right now. Ask the question, how many other people do you think are dependent on pills and don't know their own sovereign power. And like, honestly, give yourself give that a number. Don't leave it in the imagination. Give it a number.
How many people
Do you think are dependent on pills and they don't know their own sovereign power?
majority of the people
What?
who are
10, 20, a million?
I definitely think more than out of the whole world.
Well, in Texas.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna definitely say I'm gonna give it a million. Yeah.
Okay, a million. Great. So we're coming at this from pills, but you can come at this from a couple of different angles. It could be a chronic disease. But if you ask yourself, how many other people are in my situation right now? And right now we're talking about pills. There's a million other people that are struggling with pills and they don't know their own sovereign power. Imagine this. Imagine there's 500,000 people to your right, 500,000 people to your left, and they're looking in and they're willing you on. They're saying, Jojo, if you can find a way forward for you, you can find a way forward for us. Because right now, this medical system, it's not moving us forward. It's making us go backwards. Mm. And it's at that point you realize you're no longer one in a million. You're a million in one. So if you're only making an inch of progress, that's a million inches. Okay. And if you keep on making those inches of progress, and it might take you a week, a month, a decade, that is the amount of time you're going to be able to save all these other people. And if you notice what we did here, we broke our own isolation. Okay. As humans, we're social creatures. We're as powerful as we are connected. And if I'm alone, isolated, disconnected, I can do anything. I can self-justify doing all sorts of crazy crap. But if I'm connected to a million other people and they're cheering me on, and at some point in the future, they're going to be saying, you know what? Before you met us, we're so glad you started making those choices back in 2025, because now you've helped us move forward so much more quickly.
I really appreciate that. And I love when you kind of told me about the not being one in a million, being a million in one, and knowing that there's purpose and there's possibility for people once you take your purpose and your light and your empowerment and your journey and you allow it to be translated, not all your energy, we learned that earlier, but a portion of that currency, energetic currency, to give to others so they could be supported along on their journey too. And then I also wanted to kind of go back because we kind of drifted away from that. I love the fact that you brought in that you met your goal to help those veterans within a year, but what that looked like at a cost for you. And I think there's so many people that typically, and I was one of those people, I was a people pleaser. So I would definitely prioritize other people's aspirations, what they needed, how to be there, show up for them, versus learning how to really show up for myself and know how to love myself, care for myself, being able to say no. And that no meant yes to me in so many different ways. And so when you talked about showing up for people, making a great impact, but what it was costing you, 3 days, being drunk, being out there just because you had to handle so much for them. You weren't at a capacity where you were mature enough to know how to support, help, and still have yourself and still be whole. And Tim, so many people are probably out there running themselves dry, trying to use the million in one approach, a million of one approach, and not realizing that they still are that one. They still are valuable and have to take care of themselves and not place other people before them. So I wanted to really go back and say that, because that was admirable, but not a lot of times we hear people have that conversation, because they'll probably celebrate you for the veteran work that you were able to do versus who cared about Tim. What happens to Tim now with all of that hard work, that he had to take in regards to the energy that he was able to translate for other people that was in need. So thank you for that, and salute to you for accomplishing that goal and knowing what that looked like. But Tim, before, because we kind of got into the sleep, before we get off of it, and we talked about, like you said, using that unconscious energy or those times to really live to the fullest. We talked about a cat nap, and I don't know if we say cat nap over there in Australia, and we say like there's no cat nap or a power nap that can you said no pill can outdo cat nap or power nap. Like let us understand what you mean by that. And as you hit that, talk about the difference between sleep, like breath-led sleep, versus just sleep, poor sleep.
Sure. Okay. So you call it cat nap. In Australia, we call it a nana nap. So nana being grandma, a nana nap. You know, grandma has a little nap in the afternoon, and nana was right. Okay. And they've shown now that for the amount of health benefits and they dialed into men on this one too, especially men, getting that afternoon 20-minute sleep, there's not a pill out there that gives you the health benefits of a 20-minute sleep. And there's even I've heard of a number of different companies that have that as part of their daily routine, and their productivity's incredible. You know, surprisingly, you know, if you look at sleep as the soil from which everything grows, it makes a lot of sense to put fertilizer in the soil, you know. So, and even if it's just laying down doing breath work, that is massively important. Now, we spoke about sleep quality. So it's hard to get a gauge on that because a lot of people are so used to poor quality sleep. It's like eating poor quality food. You don't know it until you take the first mouthful of a really good food and you're like, oh my gosh, right? So this is what it's like with sleep. So the way I caveat this is, how many times, and I'll put you on can I put you on the spot, Jojo?
Oh, go ahead. Okay. I'm here. Okay.
All right. You ready for this? In the last 2 weeks, how many times, Jojo, did you wake up feeling refreshed with energy, ready for the day?
I'm going to go with at least 5 times out of those 14 days.
That's pretty good because most people struggle just getting 3 out of the fortnight. Okay. 5 is pretty good. You're doing something right. Still, that's not, you know, quite 50%, is it? All right. So, and there's a certain cost to, you know, that lethargy that we feel in the morning. And because everyone does it, we take it for granted and we don't challenge that. Oh, we just tell ourselves we don't have control over that. All right. So understanding the cost of doing nothing means that more than 50% of the time, you're going to wake up feeling like crap. Okay. And often that crappy feeling follows you around throughout the day. And that crappy feeling can often influence your decisions on the food you're going to eat, on the people you interact with, how you interact when you're driving in traffic. All right. So the point I'm trying to make is there's a cost to poor sleep that everyone takes for granted. But if you can actually generate, let's say we could generate, let's not try for 100%. Let's just say more than 50% of the fortnight, you're waking up and you're feeling pretty good. You know, what would it be like to have that in your life? And the impacts it would make, the choices you would make, your interactions with others, how your loved ones, you know, look at you. Oh, we don't talk to that person when they wake up because they're just a crabby, grumpy bum, you know?
Or we say they're not a morning person.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We think it's funny. Shut up until I've had a coffee. You know, don't talk to me until I've had a coffee, you know, these sorts of things. But so by definition, a good night's sleep is something that has you waking up going, I feel rested, I feel connected, and, you know, I feel good. And I can make choices that are in line with who I am, not in line with me trying to avoid a crappy feeling. Okay. So see how good sleep gets you more into going towards what you want, not avoiding what you don't want. And, minimum sleep is 8 hours. Okay. And you can break that up into a nano nap too as well. But this is where you have to understand that as humans, to create energy, we eat and we also poop. Okay. And every function that we have creates energy and creates waste. Now, your brain sits in this bag called the blood-brain barrier. And at nighttime, the spinal fluid goes up into it and pulls out all its crap because it creates a lot of energy, right? But if you're getting less than 6 hours sleep, research shows that you're not cleaning your brain properly. Okay. So that crappy feeling is literally your brain's crap still in the system. And this is where breath work is an amazing way, because even if you do get to sleep easily, understand that the presence of oxygen is the absence of disease. So giving your body a big oxygen boost before going into your subconscious sleep maintenance state is a massive advantage on your quality of sleep, your energy rejuvenation, and your removal of wastes. Because what we end up doing, what I've observed, is that we just get used to living with this level of waste in our system. And then we end up looking for comfort foods, for, alcohol, drugs, because, we want to feel good. We don't want to feel crappy. And that little thing will give us that sense of relief, okay, or connection to self. And what I say is, what if you could give yourself that connection to self? What if you could give yourself that inner healing? And you don't hear about this sort of stuff because, quite simply, no one's making money from it. It wasn't until I had a chronic injury, Jojo, that I realized that we're not in an age of information. We are in an age of marketing. Okay, the first 6 pages of Google are marketers. And marketers are really good at saying what you want to hear, promising power, but not connecting you to it. And you get a taste, but you don't get what you really want. And years will go by, dollars will leave your pocket, and then you end up blaming yourself. Because people seeking healing are very vulnerable. So I've got quite a heart for people seeking healing. Honor the seeker. But the good news is, there's good news and bad news. When you find a healer, they understand their energy is not enough for 2 people, but they're connected to something super powerful. And it might have taken them, 10 years to master that connection, but they can give it to you in far less time. And once you've got that connection, there's no resales. You've got the raw power in there, right there, whenever you need it. And so essentially the healer becomes redundant, which is completely opposite. If the marketers gave you real power, you wouldn't need to buy the product again, would you? So this is where nobody tells you, if you find the right healer, the good news is healing takes far less time than you think. And I'm honest, I can honestly say, if you find a healer and it takes them more than, they can do it usually in less than 6 engagements with them. Okay. Because that's what they do. But what nobody tells you, and what nobody told me, is the most amount of time and effort is going to be in finding the right healer, which is really hard when you're in a state of fatigue. You've been hurting for so long and you want to answer now, and the marketers go, here's your answer right now. Yes, I want Superman.
Say all the right things.
Yeah.
Like they just know you from, like, they've been your friend for years. And that it's amazing how good marketing can really be. But I think also, Tim, to go with that, when you say you find the right healer, or you find the right guide, or you find the right mentor, or you find the right support system, or you find the right community, I think you find it once you find a certain sense of self. And that's when you're able to identify that you need this most, because you're able to know what it is that you actually need, because now this is attracting to you. This is pulling you towards, this is exactly what I feel like I need in this moment. This is what I could benefit from. This is how I could transfer this energy into something that'll help me take a loss and make it more so of a trade, you know? And I think that's a big thing. But you talk to me about like the triple P. What is the triple P? Can you teach us about the triple P and like allow people to figure out how can we apply the triple P formula from Tim Thomas into our life?
Sure. So, Jojo, what we spoke about is powerful, positive, but permanency. The third P is the most important, permanency. And especially the people who are hurting, they very willingly say, go to an event or have an experience of whatever, and it might be powerful and positive, but a week later, if nothing's changed, you're not doing them a service. So it's one thing to say this stuff and to get people introduced to it. It's another thing to give them continual access. Okay, so about 2 to 3 years ago, I dropped out of public life because I was doing some really powerful and positive stuff. And I got an email from a lieutenant colonel saying it was an amazing workshop. My soldiers, some of them hadn't slept in up to 5 years, and after your experience, they could sleep well. And he thought it was amazing. And I said, that's terrible. They haven't slept in 5 years. Do you know the impact of not sleeping in 5 years? Okay. But what he said next, he said, well, it's good when you're there, but what have you got when you're not there? And I'm like, oh, snap. I'm not permanent. So I've spent the last few years creating an easy to access online resource where breathing is natural. We all do it, but it does need to be coached to get elicit a certain response from a certain level of lungs, right? Going to sleep breathing is very different to waking up breathing. So, I created a company called Breathwork in Bed, and, anyone with a phone can put the app on their phone. And I want this to be so simple to use because people that are tired, they're busy enough. They don't want to have to figure stuff out, right? So all you have to do is tell it when you want to sleep, when you want to wake up. And once you've got that locked in, we take care of the rest. It'll just fall out of your phone. When you need it, you just tap and press play, because I don't want to load people up with more stuff. I want to make life easier for them, easy and effortless. And if you're doing something new, especially, when you're tired at the end of the day, you just want to go to sleep. It's hard to do anything different. But if you can just have a button, you can tap, and be told to breathe a certain way. And then when you wake up, it's just a tap, then people start setting the frequency they want to vibe at as they go to sleep and as they wake up. And if I was to talk about permanency, if someone can do 5 to 10 minutes, it doesn't have to be much, just 5 to 10 minutes of breath going to sleep, 5 to 10 minutes waking up with breath, that is going to be a complete game changer to everything you do. Just like improving the soil improves everything else. And everyone's kind of, let's make the tree better or the fruit better. No, man, let's go a bit deeper than that. So I with as far as my effort for permanency is, as simple as putting this resource on your phone and then finding the joy of discovering your own, sovereign power and allow your joy and peace to guide you on this one.
Do you have like a testimonial or client experience of someone who took the app and they've used it for a long period of time and kind of explain like what does their life look like now that they use the app? And before you even answer that question, shout out to you for realizing that, I'm not permanent. Like I can show up in these places. I can be informative. I can give value in this space, but people need this as a part of their everyday life. They need this as a part of their healthy habits in order to stay empowered, to stay grounded, to address the problem that you were able to help them solve in this space and keep it long term. And you did that with the breath work in bed. So shout out to you for knowing that this can be a legacy to impact so many different people when you're here and when you're gone, helping solve the mission work of you being a million of one. So go ahead.
Well, hey, so if you go to our TikTok account, some of our testimonials have got close to 1 million views. I get messages from, I mean, my sort of first point of call are veterans and first responders. So I get messages from people in the States. There's even people in Indonesia, like sending me these messages saying how much breath work has made a difference to them. And, you know, the high tech part of this isn't your stupid phone. It's this alchemy that's been around for as long as we have. And this isn't new, man. Like this is around before we existed, but in our lifetime, we get a chance to package it in such a way where people can access it. So I feel, you know, this isn't something I invented. I just discovered it. And now I'm like, if I can be that pipeline for other people to go, oh, this is freaking awesome. You know, I got this now. And that to me is the joy. Seeing people flourish by just changing, you know, the one thing, their connection to their breath, their connection to their sleep, and, you know, operating as a sovereign person.
I love that, Tim. And when you were thinking about that, I was thinking about like the whole purpose of me being the healthy habits and lifestyle coach and using my M to the third degree healing empowerment formula, mindset, mindful eating, and movement. It's like, if I can just empower that one person that is, you know, gravitating towards my energy, sees my lifestyle, sees how my journey has been going, what I've been able to turn my pain into power and be empowered to live a different type of life. Like if they could change and shift their thoughts, their feelings, their belief, mindset, choose to eat with purpose, to feed their body, to fuel their body, not just their mind, and have a different relationship with food, mindful eating, and then move their body with intention, appreciating the body that they were given, whether that movement is in breath work, you know, that's movement within itself, you know, and not necessarily, I got to go to the gym, you know, I got to be a power lifter or, you know, whatever the case may be. But that mindset, that mindful eating, that movement, a lifestyle founded, a foundation in that dramatically like shifts someone's lifestyle and allows them to live with a quality of life that they never would have thought was even possible. And so being able to just be that voice to say, hey, it's possible, and to help guide you through that, I think that's a beautiful part. So I'm just so grateful that we are pipelines and vessels to really help the millions that we are of that one to really help out. And so I'm just hoping that people continue to stay empowered and know that things are possible through just these conversations.
Jojo, it goes deeper than you know. What I like, okay, this is the digital format we're recording in right now. So this is going to be around long after we're, you know, dust.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay. But if I could just add to what you said, but also bring to light the choices people make and the impact it had on others. I've been blessed to have a few NDEs, near-death experiences, where I've seen my whole life flash before my eyes. And I remember sharing this story, my life flashing before my eyes. It was actually a shark attack. But the point of the story is, afterwards I was recounting my life being flashed before my eyes, and one of the audience members says, "Oh, do you think that was a spiritual experience?" And I'm like, "No." And here's why: because it was, all I saw was my life from my own eyes. If we could really see if you believe in the spirit, from the spirit's perspective, you wouldn't just see your linear timeline. You would see how that one action then affected other people, then other people, and other people, and then other people, and then rippled through time. So if you look at like a linear timeline, one action, and then you've got this butterfly, literally the wings of a butterfly coming out from it. That's what we don't see. So, you know, there's a book that says, right now we see in part, then we'll see face to face. So we only see less than 1%, you know. And if you're going to be a healer, you're going to be happy with people not saying thank you or showing any kind of gratitude. Because if you really connect them into power, there's this thing that goes off in their head going, oh, I was always like this. All right. It's funny how quickly I was never like that. And then they, you know, and it's like, I was always like this. I don't, you know, I don't need to even show gratitude to the person that brought me this far. But the point I'm trying to make here is, if you can see, right now we don't. And the faith that I have is when we get to the other side, I believe and whether this is real or not, it helps me make powerful choices now, that I'm going to be shown the choices I made and that I saw, very similar to my near-death experience. But then I'm going to be shown all the things I didn't see, how that one action then impacted others, and then others and others. So the idea of moving with faith for me is knowing that my average everyday life is having powerful and positive impacts either side of me that I'm completely unaware of.
I needed to receive that, because I'm with you on that, Tim. Like, sometimes you get in the habit of constantly showing up and being of value, educating, impacting, and you don't really get the comments. You don't really get the, hey, you helped me with this, that, and the fourth, or hey, I'm gonna like this video because this did make me see how choosing this food, or as medicine, or shifting this thought allowed me to get up and start moving, and it's reducing my blood pressure. Like, just knowing that all the testimonials or the ways that you have impacted people, they're not always going to come to you. And so, like, that resonated with me, because I think I'm in this space where I'm still consistently showing up and I'm still doing all of the things, but there's not a lot of I'm not seeing the compound effect as of yet. And that's the beauty of it all, is that everything is compounding, whether you're doing it for yourself, whether you start doing it for other people, but over time and in the right time, it's going to happen. As long as you're, like you said earlier, staying true to yourself, being authentic, and doing what you feel is best. And so I received the compound effect, and know that it is a ripple, and that we can only see in parts. And there's no way that we can even quantify what that impact is like from anyone experiencing a conversation, maybe just one podcast episode. Needless to say, Tim, it could be a clip. One clip could change somebody's life and not even watch the entire episode, versus another piece of content I might put out, or just a simple conversation having with someone in passing. I think it's just so valuable that we don't consider that sense of energy currency that's being translated at that particular time.
No, I love that, Jojo, and you obviously needed to hear that. But consider the possibility that in maybe 100 years' time, you could be shown your life as you are right now, and you'd be shown all the things that you do not see. And you'd see these golden ripples going out, and you're looking at yourself from the top down going, oh, look, Jojo doesn't see this, but I'm so glad she did what she did. That is a possibility that I like to live into.
I love it. I appreciate it. All right, Tim. So we're going to get in the last two questions. So I believe you are a girl dad, but speak to the girl dads, the father figures, the male role models, the partners, the spouses, to people who are experiencing pelvic pain, period pain, infertility issues. Just how do they get a part of the journey? How are they able to better support and be a part of this, and not just be like, oh, that's a womanly thing, or oh, that's just something that y'all need to experience? How could they better support us in these efforts of healing?
Okay, so for me, masculine energy done right makes the feminine feel safe. And when the feminine feels safe, she can drop the threat response and just let her true self come out. Okay, because it's a delicate thing. And for that to happen, a lot of guys don't get this, and there's a lot of misinformation. But as men, we're actually meant to be happy, and we're supposed to be generous. But our happiness and generosity is relative to how powerful we feel. And what I tell my son is that power starts inside of us. Real power starts inside of us. We give it to ourselves. Okay, and it starts with our physical bodies, because we are physical creatures. And when we And conversely, if you want to see an unhappy, stingy guy, then they're not in touch with their power. And if you want to take that to an extreme, the masculine that's fully disempowered becomes threatening and threatens the safety of others. So people say, oh, he's a badass. Nah, he's a weak ass, because he is so weak. He's got to threaten with violence the safety of you, because he's got no power. He's got to take it. He doesn't know how to generate. He's got to take it. Okay, so this is the swing that people have to understand, that power done wrong is often misunderstood, that when power done right, makes a man happy, generous, and gives that feminine the space to drop her threat response and flourish. So holding space and understanding that the feminine has everything they need inside of them, all they need is a container to grow in. So if you can, and I'm dialing it back to a man's responsibility to give himself power. If you can see that your physical discipline, whatever that is, and I'm not talking shape, I'm talking state of being, energetic state. Forget the mirror, forget the scales. You feel powerful inside of yourself. That could be doing breath work, you know, it could be lifting, it could be walking, running, whatever that is. But you get your physicality right and you genuinely show up powerful, and you can be generous, you can be happy, you can hold that space. Just you kind of just have to sit back and watch the show. You know, you don't actually have to do anything. You just hold that container and let the jaw unlock of the feminine, and she will empty. I call it emptying the basket, where, you know, the feminine wants to get close to you, but she wants to empty the basket that she's been carrying. So she'll do that by just speaking to it. And don't mistake the idea that, you know, she's looking for a solution. She's just saying, look, I want to get close to you, but before that happens, I've got to tip all this stuff that I've been carrying. Once it's out of the way, great, we can connect. You know, so if I was to give any sort of Tim Thomas advice, that's not anything I've heard anywhere else. That's just something that I tell my 19-year-old son, and my 20-year-old son, and I try to do, you know, on a good day with my 19-year-old daughter. We do daddy daughter doggy dates. She's got a dog, I've got a dog. We take him for doggy daddy dates.
That's cute. I love it. And so creating those moments, that quality time and holding space. So have you ever had to like step in regards to when it came to her menstrual cycle or period pain, or just navigating her body's changes? Was there like a specific, I guess, like tip you would give to the guys or any other fathers that you would say like, how to approach that with?
I would say this. One thing I've observed about the feminine is that they sense what you're thinking. Okay. If you've got a thought in your head, you'll hold it in tension in your body. And if you've got an off topic subject, they pick on it straight away without you even saying it. So if you can be fully accepting within yourself. And if you think, you know, period pain, oh, I've got tension in my body, the feminine will pick up on that. Okay. But if you go, okay, well, where am I feeling this tension in my body? So, and this is something you can do before you meet a family member, before you meet a work colleague, is if you think of a subject or that person, we're just talking about period pain now, and that creates a bit of tension, take some deep breaths and breathe into that part of your body. Be directional with your breath. Okay. So I'm feeling it, say, in my shoulder, I'm going to breathe into that. Because the way it works is if I have a thought in my head that's tense, it'll go into my body, it'll seed there, it'll create tension, and that tension will then feed the thought, and then the thought will ramp up. And before I know it, you know, I'm like, you know, I call my daughter Jojo too, by the way. I say, so Jojo, how you going? You know, she will sense, you know, that tension in my body. So creating a clean space inside of yourself, but also knowing the feminine has 98% of everything they need. What they can't do for themselves is turn off their threat radar, because it's sort of a survival mechanism. So if you can be
with providing that space, they have everything they need, but just help them hold proper space. And then in addition to the pain that they're experiencing, offer guided breathing or breathing together as accountability to help with reducing that pain as well.
Breathe before you engage.
Ooh,
so so this is what I'm saying. Before you actually engage, if you
don't have that tension coming into the situation.
So you know, if you, as guys, you know, period pain, that sort of stuff, that may hold a certain resistance, and that'll be in your body. So before you engage with the feminine, breathe into that space, clear yourself, because that energy is taking up a percentage, say 20, or 30% or 50%, right? So if I'm engaging with somebody and this is taking up 50%, I've only got 50% for that person. And what usually happens is if you're fully engaged with somebody, you know, say past the 90% mark, they pick up on it really quickly. And it almost doesn't matter what you do or say, they know you're with them 100%.
I love that. I love it a lot, because that's really what they want at the end of the day, is for you to be with them. But being able to make sure energetically that you're available and you have the energetic currency to even handle whatever it is that y'all are about to experience together. I think that's powerful. All right, last question, Tim. If you could have a meal with any historical figure, who would it be and what would y'all eat?
Fish and chips with Jesus on the beach.
Oh, oh my goodness, Tim. Oh my goodness. So when y'all see this episode, you're gonna know that the episode that came before this also chose Jesus. But it couldn't come up with a meal and they went with bread. I was like, breaking bread with Jesus, but you gave us fish and chips. I'm all for it, Tim. So let everybody know where they can find you. How can they tap into the Breathwork app, Breathwork in Bed app, and all the good things, Tim?
Sure. Well, if you've liked this, quite simple. You simply pick up your phone, put in Breathwork in Bed in your app store. 28 days free. Will not cost you anything. I mean, like with all apps, there's a paywall you got to go through, but you won't get any charge for 28 days. You tell it when you want to sleep. You tell it when you want to wake up. We've got some amazing breathwork tracks in there, and you can literally tonight turn your bed into a cloud. That's my promise to you. Literally tonight. It's immediate and natural.
Well, I don't know, Tim. I feel like I've heard, because we talked about marketing, some people who, say turn your mattress or your pillow or these sheets with this great sleep, but I've never heard you actually turn it into a cloud. And so I think that's definitely one to check out. Like 28 days to have that type of transformation in your bed is absolutely amazing. So y'all, I hope that you know that the breath that you're ignoring might be the key to everything, absolutely everything that you're searching for. Better sleep, clearer thinking, deeper peace, but most importantly, your true self. Y'all, it's your Healthy Habits and Lifestyle Coach, Jovonnie, host of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. Check the show notes, get all the good vibes and value, connect with Tim, but most importantly, thanks for vibing with us, y'all.